Hi, I'm Erik Hall, the digital sports editor at the St. Louis Post-Dispatch. I'm joined by Lynn Hoppes. Is that correct? Is that the way? Did I say that right?
Yeah, that's it.
All right.
Correct.
He was the APSE president in 2008, 2009, while sports editor at the Orlando Sentinel and senior director at ESPN. Thanks for joining me, Lynn.
Thank you so much.
How'd you get involved with APSE?
Well, I've been involved with APSE for a long time, and it's interesting. I'm here during judging to meet some people and also to see where the organization's going forward. For someone like me, is I've always been a square peg in a round hole for the business. Besides just the idea of how I do work and everything else, it's just for me, it's been one of those things of seeing all the different ways of doing stuff. And so I think journalists can learn from everybody. And so I got involved at APSE because I really wanted to learn from a lot of really talented people. And talented people may not necessarily be from the largest newspapers or largest publications. Talented people may be somebody from a very small publication in the middle of nowhere. And so for me, that was important being part of an organization like that, because I had started out like most people. It's a small publication. You continue to move to the ladder, and all of a sudden you get up, these big organizations or a great city you want to live in. And after you do that, then you figure out, okay, what have I already done? What have I already learned? And so I took a long road to get there. And so for me, APSE is I spent a lot of time observing. And then after observing, and then I realized I don't have to run very fast. I just got to run faster than the person next to me. And so that's what I did. That's how I became APSE president.
What were maybe the mechanics of becoming APSE president for you? So
for me is that, obviously I look different than a lot of people, and I sound different than a lot of people, and I act different than a lot of people, and I was, a lot of people talk about, the way you look at the business. And so for me, it's always been sort of looking at emotion than just facts. So I've always been involved in trying to find out why things happen, why a story happened this way, or why this. And to me, that's how I always hired people. So I hire people based on the fact is that they're wondering why. It's very easy to teach somebody how to do this or do that, but they have to have the inquisitiveness thing about them. So for me, I sort of saw an opportunity because there's some really talented people throughout APSE in all different areas. So I really wanted to meet some of them. And so I would, for someone like me who doesn't drink, who doesn't really party, doesn't really do a lot of those things, it was one of those things that I saw people in the lobby. I saw people upstairs. I saw people at restaurants. And I sort of just asked them a lot of questions or just listened to a lot of their conversations, and then it's like, somebody asked me one time, who was your best boss? And truthfully, my best boss is not who everyone thinks. We'll get to him later, McKenzie. He wasn't the best boss I've ever had. The best boss I ever had was someone who was not very good, because I actually learned how not to do things, and I learned how to sit there and say, okay, that's not the best approach to do this. Let me do this. It's very easy to sit there and, be on Andy Reid's team and all of a sudden say, hey, I'm one of the coaches here. We're going to be able to do great things. It's harder to sit there and change the way of thinking when you're following somebody who may not necessarily work well with. And so that's sort of the way I did it. And so for me is I learned from a lot of really talented people. There's a lot of great people you've already interviewed and a lot of people I know you're going to talk to. And even there are a lot of people who weren't presidents of this organization. Some people did it for ego. Some people did to climb the ladder. Some people did a lot of other reasons to join and to move up in APSE. For someone like me, most people think by looking at me, they think, oh my God, he must be this massive ego type person, this big, larger than life. And in fact, most people who know me, I'm actually the opposite. I'm very quiet and very introverted and just quirky. And so it takes a lot for me to come out and do these kind of things. So that's why I sort of didn't want to do the interview for the longest amount of time. Because, yeah, I was the first APSE president who went from the print publication to digital all in the same year as the presidency. So it was the time in it was 2008, 2009, where people were starting to look at the internet, and really, really hard at how to monetize and do these kind of things. So I left the print publication and went to a digital site at ESPN. So and I was there for a handful of years, and then and I've been out of the business for about 10 years now. But it's been great to come back and see you guys, because you can still learn no matter what field you're in from the journalists that are there.
What are some of the things you're most proud of from your time being president?
Well, being president isn't really a 1-year term, despite, the way it's situated here in APSE. So I started when I became second vice president, you did the contest and stuff, and then first vice president, you did sort of conventions and things. So when I did the contest, that was the year that we posted the winners on the internet, the first time we had done that. So it was an undertaking that I took on myself as something that I thought was important. And it was something that was very hard to duplicate for a few years. And eventually, a lot of people's websites got up to date and got to be able to do that. And then I saw the design of the structure of the organization, and I thought, hey, there's some things that could be done differently. And so, I said, you know what? We had two different people in different positions, and I said, they really should be a higher level. They're not a secretary and a treasurer. So I said, let's make them executive director. So that's what we did, and we did that. So then when I became president, and I love to tell the story. And so I was at a convention, and I get up there, and, a lot of times when you have a speech, you just have it written down. And so I actually threw the speech on the floor, and I remembered, and I told you a couple of days ago, I saw the movie Under Siege, Steven Seagal and Tommy Lee Jones. And in the movie, there's a scene where they're trying to talk to Tommy Lee Jones that, and he's the bad guy, that, oh my God, that you're trying to live in this movement. Oh my God, the movement. And then Tommy Lee goes, you're exactly correct. It's not movement. Movement starts and it ends. He said, this is a revolution. Revolution starts and continues to go and continues to go. And I said, you try to kill me, son of a bitch, but welcome to the revolution. So that's what my stance was. And that was sort of my creed when I became president, is that we in the business at the time, we had to sit there and change from print to digital, video, audio, and things like that. And we as an organization have to move. And so my mantra was welcome to the revolution. So when I became president, every day from that entire presidency, the 365 days, I wrote a blog about some sports journalism news or something like that. And I wasn't expecting someone to continue that, but it was one of those things that I thought people have to go to our website for a reason. And so they would go every day and they would see something. And so that was sort of what my impetus was. And so whoever wants to become president in the future needs to think like that. Think like it's not just a 1-year term. You sort of just plant your seed going forward. And so, my presidency, I was after Mike Fannin, this, amazing editor, in Kansas City. And then right after, my number 2 person was Gary Howard, who's obviously a lot of people know a lot of great things in his career. So we had a stretch of 3 or 4 of us that were just sort of, like dynamic type, loud, you could say, just very quirky people that were running at the time as the business was changing. And so I was very fortunate to be around a lot of really talented people in APSE, and also in the staffs I've been on. I mean, I've been very blessed that a lot of people who, they always talk about the Orlando Sentinel as being one of the top publications, and one time we had, there were 5 former APSE presidents, Van McKenzie, Steve Doyle, John Sherva, Tim Stevens, and me were all presidents, either there at some point or before there, something like that. We were all there at one time, in the various incarnations. But there were many talented people, they're there. The Steve Ruiz's, Ileana, Ramon, who's here, Bill Sparrows, who's here, David Georgette, who is here, Johnny White. All these talented people are there. They all could be APSE presidents if they have it in them, like you could too. What you do, I think what you do is an amazing job, and a lot of people do. It's just whether that's in your, wheelhouse you want to do.
Yeah.
So
you talked a little bit about one of the conventions when you were president. Do you have any other memories of conventions or conferences?
So I stacked the deck. So before I became president, Orlando hosted the convention.
Yeah.
And so opening night with assistance from Bill Hoffheimer, who's now at ESPN, he was at Disney. And we had a great relationship with Disney. So the opening night reception was at Disney. So imagine having a convention where your opening nights is at Epcot. And we picked everybody up in buses and we took them to that place. And then we had fireworks and food. And the closing convention event was a big carnival, like a big carnival, not a small one, like a big one. Everybody won prizes, big prizes. And the hotel was the Ritz-Carlton. And so So at that point, I said, you know what? Let me run for president. Let's see how it's going to go. And so that happened. I mean, for me, I love the cities that the convention's been in, but I love going to places, and I understand why you guys do that. Go to certain cities, but there are a lot of things that you can learn from not going to those other. You've been to New York many times or LA, whatever like that. I like going to cities like in Indianapolis, Pittsburgh, places that we used to have judging in Dana Point, California, stuff like that, where it was like cool little spots that you're really not expecting, where you learn a lot about a community. You also get a chance to see those publications there. That's what I think is that we as individuals, we need to continue to learn on a daily basis. We shouldn't stop learning. So,
How has APSE helped you progress through your career?
well, okay, so APSE in the business has actually helped me in a lot of ways. One, it obviously got me a lot of different positions and a lot of different. I remember Paul Anger from the Miami Herald. I remember, Bill Dwyer, LA Times. I remember a lot of different people from New York, the New York Times, AP. When I was young, like you're young. So when I was young and I was pursued by a lot of publications, it was interesting because they would call other APSE people, what do you think about this person type of thing? And so I thought that was really kind of cool. I never wanted to run from something. I wanted to run to something. So for me, I'd spent an enormous amount of time at the Orlando Sentinel and then a good chunk of my career at Disney/ESPN. So I did not bounce around like that. So it allowed me to be able to, I remember going to certain cities, Arizona for an interview and just seeing how they do their operation. And I was like, wow, okay, these are really talented people here. And one time I had a conversation with a former employee of mine. Well, she was talking about this great thing that was in New York. And she said, it's the best in the country. And I said, how do you know? And she said, well, it's in New York. And I said, I don't know. The greatest Thai restaurants may not be in New York or Chicago or LA. It could be in Salt Lake City. It could be in Tuscaloosa, Alabama, that kind of thing. Yeah. So I was trying to get people to understand that not everything that's bigger is better, So for me, it was one of those things that I got a lot of talking to a lot of talented people, and they're ones that are here right now that, that it's kind of funny talking to the sports editors because I don't really care where the publications they come from. Yeah. I really just talk to them as people. Yeah. And so I think there's great value in that. One is I'm not in the business anymore, so it's not like I'm trying to get a job or anything like that, but but I was never like that anyway. I was never the person running up to the New York Times, hey, I want to do this, or to Newsday at the time. I'd been at Newsday, I'd been in Chicago and stuff. But for me, it's one of those things that you can learn from so many different people. That I work for the government right now, and one of the most respected persons for the government that I work for is the person who actually cleans the trash, picks up the trash. Oh. Because she comes in every day, works hard as hell, amazing employee, and her work ethic is amazing. And I'm like, if she says, can I do this? I'm saying, whatever you want to do. Because I can just tell in her heart how hard she works. And I'm like, she can do what she wants, And that's what I think about a lot of these publications. It doesn't really matter the size, there are a lot of talented people all over.
What are some of the personal relationships you've fostered through APSE?
Well, so because I don't drink, well, I drink a little bit, only when I'm forced to. So, and I don't do certain other activities that a lot of people like to do in the sports journalist world. I don't really eat a lot of bad food, so it's funny because when I show up, they're always trying to get me to do these things, and I'm a person that parachutes in and parachutes out pretty quickly for a lot of different stuff. So a lot of times when they see me, they're like, oh my God, we haven't seen you. And I said, I know, it's just how I am, so I see a lot of people here that I can see that still have that in their eye, that drive to be great, and to me, that's always one reason why I keep coming back is because when I was at your opening meeting a few days ago and I saw a lot of young people there, I looked at their eyes and I saw them. It's like a new employee working at a restaurant. They're all smiling. They're all laughing. They're having a great time and stuff like that. And I'm just glad nothing's beating them out of it, and this business is very, very difficult, and what you guys are doing is such an amazing thing that, I think you guys need to figure out where those lines are on the left and right and figure out to stay in the lines. But at the same time, you really need to figure out how to go forward in an inventive way. My perspective is sometimes I see some of these meetings and I'm like going, is this a replay from 5 years ago, 10 years ago, 15 years ago? And that's no fault, but it's when you have an organization that has, when you switch over leadership like you do, everyone always loves to come in and say, hey, I got an idea how I want to change this. I'm like, okay, that didn't work 7 times you tried it previously. Go for it, But I think that there's a lot of great minds who have left the business who should come back. And even if you do like I do, just come in here and get the free appetizers at the receptions and stuff like that, and sit there. I got a free cookie at your hotel.
Yeah.
I didn't get free parking, so we'll talk about that later. But outside of that, it's one of those things that I think that there's so many people here that you can actually create a scenario where you can learn from, and at the same time come up with new inventive ideas for those of us who've left the business doing other things, where we can sit there and say, you know what, let's come up with some different ways of doing that. We tried when I was president, and even before me and you, Jim Jenks and Fannin and Howard, we were looking at a lot of different sponsorships at the time. We had come up with some different ways of bringing in money. And I know Tommy was trying to do some of that following his presidency, to bring in some more different revenue streams. So I think those are things that need to continue to happen for this organization, to continue to not just to strive and thrive. It's like, I saw a lot of the meetings were about the youth, about the student chapters, about the young writers and young editors and the diversity and everything else, which I think is all really great. Is figuring out how to sit there and channel all that to be where you can actually put it in action, and so I think there's still a lot of growth here. And I don't, it's a really, every year can be a clean slate, and so that's sort of why, that I sort of led that certain way, and I sort of loved being part of this organization is it's not a Titanic. This is not the Titanic. This is not The Walking Dead. This is figuring out how to be successful and to lift up all the boats at the same time, and it's doable. It's just with the right mindset and the right people.
Talked about this a little bit in what you were just talking about, but what advice would you have for future APSE presidents to maybe not keep trying to do the same things over and over again, but also just be successful in that role?
Well, success is relative.
Yeah.
I mean, a lot of people, what is success to you may not be success to somebody else. Success for me is seeing that a kid that I hired straight out of college, Jeff Darlington, is on TV every day for the NFL for ESPN. And this shows what he is about. When he was in college, he sent me a list of top 10 reasons I should hire him. Top 10 reasons I should hire him. And it was 1 through 10. And so I didn't call him back immediately. And then I did. I hired him. Hired Jeremy Fowler is also there. Andrew Adelson is also on there. Jamel Hill is on there. So I had done a lot of these hires, but I think where I see how this organization can change a little bit is to basically to clean slate and have a blank canvas and say, you know what, Robert's Rules of Order, we're going to push it aside. We're going to redo the entire organization. A lot of your discussion about what to do with the regions. Hey, we're knocking down to 4. Well, Robert's Rules of Order, we've got to sit there and have the votes. We need all these things. There's a lot of cool paperwork that is going to change all those things. Why? This organization doesn't really need some of those things anymore.
Yeah.
Do you really need to sit there and follow that, the idea? Doesn't mean you just discard all of it, but why don't you sit there and say, you know what? We're not in that position now. We can't take 6 months to do something. We need to get things done in 6 days.
Yeah.
The contest. How are we going to change all that? How are we going to do this? A lot of times there's infighting on a lot of different things about, hey, if we do this, these categories enter this and that type of thing. I remember when I was heading the judging in the contest, and it was such a big deal about late entries. We can't get you in there. And I was like, okay, really? We did a Marty Paws dog event this couple days ago, and what I do. And so we had 34 dogs. 4 dogs showed after the time. 4 dogs literally showed up when we were starting it. They look at me and I go, put those damn dogs in. Like, come on, people. Seriously? It's the same thing.
Yeah.
If it's the best work, it's the best work. It's one thing to sit there and have hard and fast rules, but it's another to sit there and understanding what everyone's going through. And so I think this organization has the real potential to sit there and, we had a conversation a couple of days ago. A lot of the student chapters, a lot of the young people, the way they write in text. I'm sure you do too. I do how are you in abbreviations. Okay, not the greatest, but does that mean people don't understand what's going on?
Yeah.
So why can't you do that with the organization itself? Just decide, okay, what is more important for us? What's more important for us is to sit there and be a viable organization moving forward. Do we need to sit there and try to be antiquated and follow everything we've done for the last 40, 50 years of the organization? There's some truth to that, but at the same time, to be able to sit there and get people engaged and energized is you need to sit there and realize what is most important. And I think what's most important is, in this contest, is obviously the awards themselves, but at the same time is making sure that everyone understands that, what they do is valued in some way, because we all know people who've won many, many APSE awards. I mean, I had stacks of them. I still got laid off,
Yeah.
So even those kind of things, it doesn't necessarily translate to, oh my God, and you have to realize that for someone like myself, I always, when I worked in the entertainment business, and I always asked these celebrities this one question, and I said, when were you at peace? And to me, someone said to me, when were you at peace, Lynn? And I was at peace at the age of 31. And someone said, how do you know? And I said, I was at peace when a coworker of mine got promoted, and instead of being jealous, I was happy. I said, that's when I knew I was at peace. And so I think we, as in our businesses and a lot of these businesses, sort of Zen-like discussions, but I think we got to find where our peace is, and what's important. And some of the things that people argue about are not as important as they should be.
Yeah.
So,
Okay.
Yeah.
Is there anything else you want to add, or any other stories you want to share? Or?
No, I mean, what the thing is that, I'm reluctant to do these kind of things. It's funny when I've been in different publications and I didn't, do a lot of this kind of stuff, because for me, it's never about me. A lot of people, it's really about the staffs and the people I've worked for and worked with. I mean, it's so funny because, a lot of people, when Kareem Abdul-Jabbar, and the whole thing with LeBron James, and I was looking through my phone and I realized I can just call him Kareem because I had his cell phone number.
Yeah.
I edited Kareem Abdul-Jabbar, edited his copy.
Yeah.
And that's just a weird thing to tell people. Yeah, what were you doing? So when you looked at my phone, you're like, wait, yeah. And that's, so, I mean, I've had a really great career, and fortunately for me, I have a new career. And so I like to come back and see what you guys are doing and see all the positive steps you make. And it's really, I'm really glad for, the growth, I'm really glad what you do. And I'm glad that you're continuing to push projects like this, because I think that there's too many people sit there and say it's easy to stay in the same place that I've always done certain things. And making people uncomfortable, sometimes not a bad thing, So that's pretty much it.
All right. Well, thanks so much for your time, Lynn.
Okay. Thank you.